Hey guys, welcome back. Joe Brunsman, Insurance Broker of the Stars. Tonight, I'm talking about those digital time bombs. This is dealing with cybersecurity and why, if you're an SMB out there and maybe you've been pushing off getting an MSP, or you don't see the value of an MSP, or maybe you've looked at some quotes and you just haven't pulled the trigger, I'm going to be showing you why I think it's just simply an inevitability that you're going to have to hire an MSP. And you're going to probably want to do that sooner rather than later. And this is why. So this will look familiar if you've been following my channel for a while. This is what's called a critical vulnerability exclusion. And this exclusion is already in some cyber policies. If you haven't already seen this, one, it might be in your cyber policy if you haven't read it. Two, if it's not in there, it's probably going to be in there at some point. All right, so what does this exclusion effectively deal with? You'll see here it has to do with vulnerability exploitations within a computer system, program, network, application, operating system, software, firmware, or hardware. So effectively your entire system, if a vulnerability comes out through CVSS that has a score of 8 or greater, your business has 14 days to implement that patch, or you could effectively have zero cyber insurance moving forward. Now, that is obviously a big problem, and let's talk about why. All right, quick interjection. Joe from the future here. It occurred to me that if you're a business owner watching this, you may not have any idea what the hell I'm talking about. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that in front of you here. This is CVE, their actual Twitter page, and I just wanted to kind of show you guys what this means and how complicated this could really be. And this is something that if you have a computer network, you're supposed to be keeping up with this stuff. So here you'll see CVE, their Twitter. This was an hour ago. CVE 2022, 37,000. An issue was discovered in Veritas backup 8.1x through 8.1.2, 8.2, 8.3x through 8.3.0.2, 9.x, blah, 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 blah. Under certain conditions, an attacker with authenticated. You don't have to know what that means, but somebody within your organization has to keep track of this stuff. And I will say, this is the actual CVE website. And right in front of you, you're going to see there are 181,116 CVE records accessible. This is just a phenomenal amount of information and a giant pain for any in-house IT guy. Now, if we just look at, I just have in front of you, this is just the current CVEs issued as of 2022, and I will just keep on scrolling up here. And you'll notice some of this stuff, part of it's going to be cut off by the screen, right? But you'll notice like a null byte interaction error has been discovered in the code that the telnet d_startup daemon uses to construct a pair of ephemeral passwords. I mean, if you're a business owner, like how in the hell are you going to know what any of this stuff means? And look, I'm still scrolling, still scrolling. Still scrolling, and that's the top. That's just so far in 2022. All right, so kind of moral of the story here is this is highly complex, highly technical, and if you just have somebody that's kind of moonlighting in the IT department, it's just not going to cut it. All right, with that, back to our regularly scheduled programming. So what you have to worry about here is hackers are faster than you, and that's a big problem. So this new report just came out from Palo Alto Networks, Unit 42. I'll link to it in the end here where I'm getting a lot of this information. What they're talking about is, yeah, maybe your good guys in-house are monitoring software vendor websites for any vulnerability disclosures. Well, so are the bad guys. And they're going to use these to gain access or perform an RCE, a remote code exploitation. Now, your internal IT guys probably are doing a million different things. Everything from, hey, I can't get the projector to work, to this piece of software isn't working, or having a connectivity issue here. I need someone to reset my password. Well, in that time, what this report is saying is they've seen attackers typically start scanning for those vulnerabilities within 15 minutes of that CVE being announced. All right, within 15 minutes. So unless you just have a guy who's just at a drop of a hat scanning through a whole laundry list of information, then it's just going to be really damn hard to try and beat these guys. Okay, so for one vulnerability, this report noted there were over 2,500 attempts to gain access through that vulnerability within the first 10 hours. Now, let's look at just suspected initial access and why patching is such a crucial element to your business. Right? How did they first get in? From the report, you'll see here, everybody's worried about those phishing attempts. Most businesses now that are taking this threat seriously, they're looking at employee awareness training. All right, that's going to be 37% is through some type of phishing. You're going to see software vulnerabilities at 31%. All right, 31%. So damn near just as important as training your employees to avoid phishing. You're also going to see other things here: social engineering, insider threat, previously compromised credentials, brute force attacks, all these other kind of issues where in the grand scheme of things, maybe they sound sexy, there's a bunch of vendors out there, but software vulnerabilities and patch management is just a grind, and it's just really hard to do in-house. Ransomware access. In this report, they look at, okay, what led to ransomware? That's the boogeyman in the room. I know tons and tons of business owners where this issue is really just at the top of their list, and it's a nightmare scenario, frankly. What are we looking at here? 48%, almost half software vulnerabilities. Now you're going to see phishing, 12%, previously compromised credentials, 8%, brute force credential attacks, 20%. So that could just be really bad passwords. So I know a lot of business owners out there, you're making sure that, hey, maybe you have this policy and maybe your internal IT staff is every 90 days, you have to reset your password. You got to have so many normal characters and special characters and numbers, etc. Well, that's only going to be less than half of what you're going to see in terms of software vulnerabilities. So this is really a very, very crucial element for your business. Now, as a former IT guy, obviously I'm an insurance broker now, but as a former IT guy, I will say patching ain't easy, but it's necessary. It's just a pain and it's a grind. But here's some things I think you need to think about. If you've never worked in the IT field, this is not like installing a Windows update. All right, it is way more complicated than that. There's a laundry list. People have to dig through that, see if it actually applies to all the different software and hardware that your business could be utilizing. Also, you have to realize, okay, what actually takes priority in-house? If you have like one IT guy or somebody that's moonlighting as IT, he's not going to be able to keep track of this and implement these patches in a decent or reasonable amount of time if he's working on the projector, resetting passwords. There's just not enough time in the day. And frankly, IT guys are just getting burned out. Now, obviously, this is part of it, but there has to be some priority here. There's only so much time in the day. There's only so much time you can keep him in the office. And so, that's why like something has to take priority, and that needs to be verbalized to your IT staff. Next, you have to realize if this is all in-house, do you even have an inventory of all the current hardware and software that you're using or cloud providers you're using? Because there are cloud exploits as well. How is this all going to be done with remote workers? That is going to be more and more of a pain moving forward. Next, who's going to evaluate, test, deploy, and monitor these patches? All right, there's many times where you have to sandbox this, you have to try and implement the patch, make sure it doesn't break anything, because one vendor may put out a patch and that may interfere with some other vendor's piece of software, or it may interfere with some other type of hardware you have. So it's not as easy as just clicking install for a Windows update. It's a lot more complicated than that. And how is all of this communicated? And what's that business vulnerability threshold? Commonly, we had this thing called Patch Tuesday, where you just waited till everybody was gone from the office, and then, hey, it was Patch Tuesday, and you just push all these patches through. You can't necessarily just wait a week to get this done. What if one of the previous patches that's not as crucial to your business, there's some hangups there that's got to be worked through, and then they push the patch off to the next week? Well, maybe now you're going to fall within that vulnerability window that leads to an exclusion within your cyber policy. That would be a nightmare scenario. But once again, there's just not enough time in the day. And there's a whole bunch of other factors that I will not opine upon here, but suffice to say, it's a complicated, tedious, soul-crushing process. Now, what do hackers actually hate? And this is per Palo Alto Networks and their division, their Unit 42. This is what they're talking about. MFA in 50% of all cases. Organizations lacked MFA on, and this is not just for email access, key internet-facing systems such as corporate webmail, virtual private network solutions, and other remote access solutions. It's going to take someone who really knows what they're doing to implement that. Next, EDR and XDR in 44% of cases. Organizations didn't have endpoint detection and response, that's EDR, or extended detection and response, that's XDR. Security solutions, or it wasn't fully deployed. Next, patch management procedures in 28% of all cases. That's almost a third of all cases dealing with some type of cyber event. There was poor patch management procedures contributed to the threat actor's success. Next, responding to security alerts, that's 11% of cases. And password security that everybody's all up in arms about all the time. That's only 7% of cases where you had weak password security practices contributed to their ability to, further objectives. To quote Seinfeld, yada, yada, yada. Now, there's some good news here. All right. The good news is you can have your cake and you can eat it too. This doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fire all of your internal IT staff. As a matter of fact, in many cases, MSPs, these managed service providers, or you can also think of them as like an outsourced IT security, cybersecurity group that's helping your business, kind of this deep bench that you have that's kind of hidden away in the back. In many instances, they'll actually prefer if you keep that guy in-house so that he can deal with all the run-of-the-day type issues. The projector's not working. We can't get the TV to work. We have to set up a Zoom meeting. My keyboard died. I need to reset my password. All that kind of mundane stuff, a lot of that can actually be taken care of by your traditional in-house IT staff, if you have one. And just keep those basic duties in-house. Now, it's going to depend on the MSP. It's going to depend on your business and your network architecture and what you have going on. But it's not all bad news. Now, like I said, those basic sysadmin cybersecurity, just outsource that to an MSP. All right, outsource it now, because this stuff, it's only getting more complicated. And the longer you wait, I think it's really just the more painful it's going to be. And like I said before, how many business owners do I know? And I've done hundreds and hundreds of cyber insurance policies. How many business owners do I know that have actually read through that policy? Well, I read through that stuff. They almost never do. And if you're a business owner watching this, I'm going to guess you also probably have never read through your cyber insurance policy. How many insurance guys actually read through the cyber policies they're selling to people? I mean, I would argue single digits. And that's if I'm being generous, unfortunately. So maybe your insurance guy doesn't know that exclusion's in there. Maybe you don't know that exclusion's in there, but it could really come back and you could just have potentially hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in uncovered losses if your IT staff is just too overwhelmed or doesn't have the expertise to do this. Now, I would encourage everybody, hey, go to Palo Alto Networks, download the latest PDF where I drew a lot of this information from. There's a ton of great information in there. All right, but with that, I will stop yapping because my voice is going out. Excuse me. All right, if you found this useful, you learned something today, like, share, subscribe, comment, tell your fellow business owners, because like I said before, it's only a matter of time until your business effectively has to get an MSP. All right, so please stop putting that stuff off. It's only going to get worse. All right, if you enjoyed that, right above me is another video for you. And if you click over there on my beautiful face, you can subscribe to my channel. All right, guys, with that, stay safe.